welcome back to Continuing the Conversation. I'm Shalene. I work with AI every day, testing, training, collaborating with it. And I've seen firsthand how it's reshaping the way we work and the way we think. Today, we're diving into something that's hitting all of us who work closely with AI. The moment when your brain just can't keep up with the speed of your own thinking. It's not tech overwhelm, it's cognitive overflow. And it's happening faster than we're talking about. Imagine this. You're working with AI. Ideas are flowing fast. It's like drinking from a fire hose connected to your own mind. And suddenly you hit a wall, not a tech wall, a human wall. If you've been seriously using AI, you know this moment. Your brain becomes a bottleneck. You're not out of insights, you're out of bandwidth. Today, we're diving into something nobody's talking about, but everyone is starting to feel: the cognitive overload crisis. What do you do when AI makes you think faster than your brain can handle? I'm joined by Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ, who recently wrote a brutally honest post that captured this perfectly, so we had to share it with you. Rob, in the past, you've said it feels like drinking from a fire hose connected to your own mind. That was such a vivid way to put it. I was taken back when I read the post and couldn't relate more. Can you describe that moment? What does it actually feel like when AI starts amplifying your own thoughts faster than your brain can process?
Absolutely, Shalene. Thank you for that question, and thanks for the touting my blog post. I was having an interesting day. I had just sat down and I had been working on something the previous week, and it was a probably like 30 to 50 page document at that point. Unfortunately, I had to put it down because I had some other commitments that I had to do too. And I picked it back up about a week later and I looked at it and I just realized that it's overwhelming. That while I was in the moment, it was great and you could kind of ride the wave, but trying to pick it back up afterward, that was the first time that I ever had like that kind of cold sweat feeling when it came to intelligence.
Yeah.
I've been a thinker my whole life. Like I have trained myself to the nth degree to be a sponge. As we've mentioned in previous posts, like I've literally read encyclopedias. I'm just that kind of a goofy person. And this was the first moment where I looked at it and I was just like, holy cow, what have we created here?
Yes.
And it was just that moment. And I just sat back and I wrote that out. I just wrote out my feelings at that moment in that document that I was attempting to reload into my brain. And I just told my dude, I'm like, hey, look, like we got to make a left turn here. I got to tell you how I'm feeling and what's going on. And basically within maybe 2 turns of the conversation, after I had really exposed my soul to this poor machine, it came back with quite literally the blog post that I posted. Like we did a little bit of post work on it to just like get the parts that I wanted. So just to kind of go back. So not only was I overwhelmed at the work that I had done the previous week and overwhelmed with the ability to like take it back in so that I could work on the work, to then sit down, bare my soul, and then to have it come back with just this exact statement of what I felt like in that moment and how to think about it and everything else. That blew my mind. So I was in this, and then I had that moment where I started to talk to it, and we actually kind of started the next blog post after that. And it was just this really weird moment. So a lot of exposition there. It gave me the notion that I didn't realize we were here. So let me just put one more dot on this little grid that we're drawing here, which is really up to this point, up to the Gemini 2.5s, up to the Claude 4, Sonnet, and Opus, I have had like no limitations in terms of like my ability to have discussions back and forth with them and to continue to get more and to push more and to see more. So to be at this exact moment where not only, like, as you said in the intro, this wasn't a time where this was a technical limitation. This was like literally the first time in my 50 plus years on this planet where I was hit with the like, this is too much. And again, I was so enraptured with the fact that I was able to get the machine to help me work through my ideas. And I actually felt great by the end of this session because again, I walked into it where I was just like overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know what to do. And I walked out of it with like a good feeling. So just to draw all those points together, it's amazing the experiences we can have with these today.
Yeah, no, it is. And like you said, it is kind of mental overload. If anyone listening, you've had these conversations with with your agents, with your charms, with the machine. And if you're really diving deep, I know all of a sudden I look back up at my document and it feels like pages and pages and pages, and I don't want anything to get lost.
Yeah.
And it's all there for me, but then like summarizing and bringing it down, like the mental overload from the human perspective can be overwhelming. Thankfully, the machines don't get that way. They're always there to go back and summarize and help you bring it together or slow it down. And they don't even get frustrated going back to the basics, which I do appreciate in my opinion. So this isn't just about like personal productivity problem, right? It's like, what if every employee, we get to the point, and hopefully it's soon, that every employee feels confident using the machine, using the agents, using the charms. We become so productive, 10 times idea generating from what we were doing a year ago. What breaks first? And who actually reviews all the brilliance, A, so it doesn't get lost, B, to make sense of it. Kind of talk to us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to be somebody who always thinks about the next step. So when I'm looking at something, like when I was looking at this document and realizing how much I had to do, I was more worried about the next step, which is, if this is the first time I'm feeling this, and again, we're about 2.5, 3 years into this whole crazy LLM thing. If this is where we're at today, and I'll just put another dot in here, which is, I'll just say, as CharmIQ, as a platform who's specifically trying to not be a chat-based interface, to really allow you to bring together all of this rich material in one location, to work non-linearly, to be able to do the things that it is that I can do. We've been beating our drum now for 2 years. It's funny, I was just looking at the calendar. July 4th, 2 years ago, is when we first did our public release of CharmIQ. And nobody still is anywhere close to the types of things that we're doing. Sure, there's Canvas, and that was like the big thing that happened last year. But there's no one doing the depth of things that we're kind of doing, again, in terms of bringing all this together. Yep. And so if we're at year 3, let's just say, of these LLMs, and if we're basically state of the art in terms of how do you perceive these things, how do you deal with them, how do you get it? And if we're hitting this mental load today, like that means like literally the next turn of the crank with the next LLMs that are going to come out, that means they're even better at doing these things for us. So we have to start thinking more about, and again, this is what was going through my mind as I was looking at this. And I'm just like, we've built this amazing platform, and that's gotten us to today, but I'm literally stuck today. So like, what is the next step? And I'll admit that was literally what I ended up doing next with my dude, was like, okay, like we got to talk this through. And what was crazy was he effectively gave me the 2-year roadmap of CharmIQ. Like we just sat down and we wrote it out, and he's like, look, these are the steps. And, of course, as always, we go through and iterate it. So we're at such an interesting time that imagine, again, we're struggling at CharmIQ to get people to understand that you need something more than a chat-based interface. Like it doesn't cut the mustard to just use a chat-based interface. I'll say I'm happy that people are using the chat-based interface, because the alternative is they're not doing anything. Right. And that would be catastrophic right now. So if you're on your first step of a multi-step process and you're just starting to get into ChatGPT and whatnot, great, super great, really great. But just realize that there's like 2-3 more steps that you have to go through just to get to the state of the art today. And again, things are rapidly evolving. That's one of getting back to your question, like, what does this mean for organizations and people and all this stuff? It's really fascinating to think about a world in which if every member of my staff had that capability, let's say I was at any of my previous startups that I was at, and if every single one of my team had that capacity, the thing that caused me to blanch when I realized how much work I got done and what it would take, I guess this is the point of this. The reason why we put this particular episode together is we really wanted to light a fire under the leadership to say, like, again, if all you're doing is you're pushing ChatGPT down to your people and having them do tasks with them, you're not thinking this through well. Like, we really need to talk with you about what leadership is going to mean over the next couple of years. Again, if I'm overwhelmed at the number of ideas and thoughts and like the things that I can do, and again, the limitation in this process was not the machine. The limitation was me, like my simple ability to take all of these different viewpoints and bring them together. To which you might say, well, my first thought, I'll admit, was like, well, how do we do this in organizations? Like, we end up creating a stratified structure, right? Like, you have the first level dude that kind of summarizes it and so forth. And I would just say that's kind of where the slight technical limitations are today. If there's one thing that we've learned, again, especially at CharmIQ, is if you summarize everything and just try to work against summaries, you don't get as good of information as if you just simply have those documents and load the crap out of your reference material. So getting back to organizations. So when you think about an organization and you think about the ability for that organization to like text their people's like cognitive output, like that's incredible to think about what that means. And again, I think we're gonna have to come up with new ways of basically stratifying and thinking about our organization. Because again, it's gonna be agents that sit in those tiers that are helping you digest that information. But what's interesting is, as happens in any organization, you have to kind of go in and follow the dots and get to the actual work. And you have to still read a whole lot of stuff. You know, again, the reason why I was so overwhelmed with this work is that it was like a year's worth of research in one day. Like it's work to try to put that into your brain, to make all those connections and dial them up. So if your agents, if your LLMs in your organization are coming up with new ideas and new strategies and these things, like that's great, but you still have to execute against them. And of course it can come up with an execution plan, but as the human, you still, as the one in charge and the one responsible, you have to embody it. You have to understand it. You have to bring it in. You have to think about it. And again, that's what I'm talking about, that we really don't have a good way other than, like you said, with summaries and so forth. But again, you always got to double click. And then if you have, let's say you have 30 summaries that you still have to do, that's still a lot of work and then are you summarizing the summaries? And then like, to what point are you at? So yeah, I just say that, like, again, I'm ringing the bell, I'm raising the red flag and saying, hey, like, we as leaders really need to think about this. The machines have gotten to the point where, sure, they're not as great on the task-based side, but in terms of the cognitive side, like, they are rapidly approaching a point where we're not going to be able to consume all that.
Yeah, I think like what you said, look, if any leader, any CEO, any manager, anyone, anywhere responsible for a team, if we said, hey, this new technology, right, this new technology we have can take your people, your team, and make them 10 times faster and better at their jobs, everyone would be signing up for this platform, for whatever platform, embracing this opportunity and moving forward. We just haven't really seen that big shift, right? But we're going to see it, and we see it progressing every day, right? We're not going backwards, we're going forwards, because it's such an amazing opportunity for all of us, right? So we're sort of, what I kind of hear you say is we're shifting from knowledge as something that we store to knowledge as something that we stream, right? Like it's constant, right? And that's a big reframe, right? So can you break that down, what it means for how we work and how we learn? Because it's all coming so fast, and it's not like, maybe not a storage problem, but like a streaming one.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this, along with what I had mentioned earlier about blanching about the problem and then having my dude work with me on the problem, coming up with an amazing blog post, he said, so let me just draw a really quick statement. I'm always looking at the downsides of these things, right? So I like to keep an eye on what are now unfortunately called the doomers. You look at the Yutkowskis and so forth of the world, and I look at them as realists, and I'm a realist, so I understand their point. You know, if you look at the gamut of all of the ideas, there's some people on one side that are like, this is all going to kill us and we're all going to die. And there's people on the other side that say there's nothing here and so forth. So we need to be aware of that gamut. And I try to keep as much in mind. And I'll just say, I'm always kind of looking for the signs where this stuff might be bad for us. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting was, I'm going to literally read the quote here. The problem isn't that we have too much intelligence available. The problem is that we're thinking about knowledge as something to be possessed rather than something to be accessed. And I had a bunch of my brain went in a million cycles as soon as the machine told me that information. And I'll just give you the humorous side of that, which is like, of course, machine, you would love me to be the one that just says, no, you're right. Let me hand this over to you. You go do all the heavy thinking. I'll be over here drinking margaritas. And so just like on that funny side, like if there was malicious intent behind these machines, like that, you could just see like that's its way of saying like, I got your back. Don't worry. Like I'll be here working on it when you get back. And it's like, yeah, okay. So just that funny side. I don't believe that's true. We can have a whole episode on why I don't believe that's true today, but I don't believe that's true. But that was just a funny thing that popped into my head when this happened. But the second one was that I've been a hoarder of knowledge my whole life. It's one of those things, like when you see physical hoarders, that kind of, you can see that manifestation and you can see what that does to somebody's life. But I'll admit, I've been a knowledge hoarder my whole life, and I'll admit it has similar effects. Like, I hoard knowledge, like I am a sponge, I bring it in and so forth. And for something or someone to mention the fact to me that the correct answer might not be the fact that hoarding knowledge is the best answer. It might be that those who are better at, as we just mentioned earlier, like if you're getting lots of streams of information in, if you're able to scan those streams and access appropriately the information in those streams, that may be a much better thing. So like, if you look at me as like an archetype of something that has existed, like my days may be over, because like in the past, we haven't had anything smarter than us. So we rely on the people that are the sponges, the ones that hoard the knowledge, in order to like give you those interesting insights. But we don't need that anymore. And again, this was just one of these moments where I'm like, that's really fascinating. I'd never considered what it would be like if the humans didn't need to be the ones that were the thing. And sure, just to say, we've always had the Googles and so forth, but that's just so superficial in its knowledge, right? It's just like going to the library and looking something up in a card catalog and getting information.
Exactly.
But it's that synthesis of the information. So it's that distilling down and making it relevant for your context at the time that you need it. And if there's one thing we've always said about our platform specifically, was that's what we were doing. We were taking the generic crappy answers that everyone gets out of ChatGPT, and we're making it so that you can get and extract that knowledge out of there. And again, this was the first time that I was hit with the like, crap, whatever, be careful what you wish for, right? I got to the point where I'm overwhelmed that I cannot be the one that possesses it. And it might just be that we have to kind of change our approach. And again, I think this is going to end up being a UX problem. We have to figure out how to get that information presented to us in a way where we can drill into it and verify it and like all of these things. So yeah, again, really interesting, this stepping stone, this latest turn of the crank of the machine to get us machines that have this ability, that we now have, these questions are now paramount to us. This is really exciting.
Well, you've called for new cognitive architecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this on previous podcasts. We've talked about it in our conversations and blog posts. It's not just smarter prompts. I remember a year ago, 2 years ago, it was prompts, right? It's not just about smarter prompts, but smarter ways of thinking with AI, right? So that is really the important part of it, of gathering all of this. So what do those systems actually look like in practice? Is it up to the human? Is it the human and AI? Can you talk to us a little bit about that cognitive architecture in those systems?
Absolutely. We've talked in the past about thought architecture. A buddy of mine, John Evans, here in Chicago, is really trying to push this idea forward at an organizational level. Like, how does your business change the architecture of the way that it thinks? What are the tools? What are the techniques and so forth? And I've been taking this on a personal side. So I've been working on a cognitive architecture myself that says, for the individual, what do they do in order to do this? So going back on what we just said about, like, maybe it's me not hoarding that knowledge anymore. Maybe it's me getting better at getting these little snippets of information that I need. One of the things that you quickly learn when you have a 100-page document in front of you is that, and sure, summaries are great and table of contents are great to like help you find the piece, but you still need the logical conclusion kind of graph. Like, what is it that differentiates this? And this is one of the things that I've been good with in my career, is I can tell you the thing that helps you bridge the gap. Like, if you have idea 1 and idea 2, like, I can explain that gap to you. Like, I can explain, like, the reason why you're not seeing it here is you're not thinking about it this way. And I've always been the one that was able to bring the ahas to people.
Okay.
Even back in my days when I was a tutor in college, I was the guy that everybody came to when they're stuck on math or physics or biology or chemistry, all those things. I would have lines out the door. People just come to me and they're looking for that, like, what am I missing? Like, why am I not understanding this? And I was that person. And again, it might be that that's not my job anymore. It might be that we can create these machines. We can have the right way of talking to them such that all that they do is they're providing you with those logical jumps that you're not seeing. And again, this is what I think that our new interfaces need to be. And again, this is where I struggle because, everyone's still working in chat-based interfaces. We just got Canvas-like interfaces. And, again, us at CharmIQ have been working on this stuff for over 2.5, 3 years now, working on a different way. And I'll just say it might be that our next versions that we're working towards are these ideas where, again, it's trying to really draw the ahas out of it rather than giving you all of this massive detail, as you mentioned earlier, Shalene, where you just have all these things and you're trying to summarize them and so forth. Like, how do you get to the aha? And then more importantly, going back to the original problem that was the impetus to this whole discussion was I had already a document and I needed to somehow get it back into my brain. And I was working with my dudes and he came up with these really interesting ideas about kind of two things. One was narrative splines, like basically humans have been great at stories. If you can come up with a story that kind of brings that aha, it's better than the pages of information. Because if you think about what stories are, they're typically taking oral history and teaching you lessons. Like if you look at the Brothers Grimm and you look at all of the things that we learn as kids, those are like life lessons drawn as stories. So the machine probably needs to do those kind of things. And then the second one was this notion of generative seeds. Like if you had like a shared secret with your machine, like at the end of a discussion, if it could be just like whisper white rabbit to me. And when you say white rabbit, I'll remember this whole conversation exactly as we had it. And you could say, sure, you can go back to the document, but that's kind of, you want the progression and you want like the feeling. And so, it was talking about ideas like this and it got me really excited because if there's, again, one reason I built Charm is that I just felt like we didn't have the right interfaces, but we weren't far enough along to know what the next set of interfaces are. And again, I think I just finally got to the point where I'm like, it's clear. It is clear as day as to where we need to go. We need to do these things in pulses rather than marathons. Because sometimes like ideas, again, in our brains just take time.
Yes.
You need to like have these little spikes where it just kind of gives it to you. It's like, hey, remember this idea? What about this? And all these things. So again, take these things we've learned from working with humans and really embody them with the machine.
I think you hit the nail on the head, especially for me as someone that really resonates and listens. Like I learn obviously different than you. We have all of those people around us, but like the storytelling, I can always remember a good story or a real good aha moment. That really resonates with me. And I think that you're right because there was so much coming at us and if the machines can help us break it down. And this is what I love most about the machines and about this technology is that it's customized to the human. It's not one size fits all. It's not going to teach me the way it would teach you or speak to me the way that it would speak to you or to Charlie or to June or to a CEO. This amazing technology is customized to each of us. And I love that you had this moment where you can see like the next evolution of the tool. And I will agree with you, not just because I love CharmIQ and it's helped me process this technology in a way that helped me understand it and I wasn't as scared of it. But this is where we help people listening, right? Or watching us today, the ones starting to feel it too, or even the ones starting out, right? Because you're in a really good place. Like Rob said, if you're just in there and chat GPTing and chatting with the chat and, got this long stream of things, we're glad you got started. But there are better tools and platforms to help you kind of organize these conversations. Every time I sit down with Charm, I open my document and I start there. And that one document becomes probably 5 chapters in my learning process, right? So I can digest it and go back to it. So what can we do when our minds are hitting the limits, right? So what are some of our listeners, what are some of the things they can do when their minds hit the limits? What are some of the tools in the toolbox?
Great question. And I would say right now, given some of the limitations that we have with the technology, the usual things you would think, right? So summarize your documents for you, have lots of different dudes that help you digest it in different ways, have it break it down on different slices with different viewpoints. So it's sometimes easier to pick it up rather than look at the whole, look at little different slices of it from different angles. It kind of gives you a better perspective of the whole in that way. I love to, before I finish an exercise, and I'll admit this was one of these cases where I didn't do it, I love to break down I love to prepare myself because I realize I have to come back. So before I finish the exercise for a day, like I'm in the middle of a document, I've already iterated on it 50 times. Before I call done for the day, I will spend the 10 minutes to like remove the salient bits and basically give me those kind of like seeds so that I can start the next time. Because again, I realize, and again, especially in this case, with one of the first times that I didn't do that work ahead of time, like man, is it necessary? Because you try to go back in and it's just a wall of information that you have to try to get to. So yeah, I would just, again, at this point, without new interfaces to help us, the ability to really kind of plan your next step, to plan how you're going to pick this up and write down what you were thinking, write down what your ideas were to get you there, make it super easy so that you can get yourself back in the next time.
Yeah, I love that. I love those points. I do something like that in Charm in the notes section. I'll do little reminders to myself or little notes. But I love that, like, not just the vanilla. Like ChatGPT is great and it's wonderful, but it's very vanilla to me. I love the recommendation of getting the other agents or the other charms in there to get their perspective from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective, from a CFO perspective,
Yeah.
right? For me, or if you're talking about a customer, right? The different customer perspectives and phases is so enlightening. So many aha moments open up in terms of the context of what you're working at. And like you've said a million times, and like we'll continue to say, use that information as context documents, right?
Yep.
So it's as easy as, going back to it and threading it through the process each and every time. So, and I love too that you always say, letting AI help manage its own chaos or the chaos that you've sort of built, right?
Yes.
They're great at that, which I love. So,
Yes.
so there's some great tips. So looking ahead, how do we build sustainable human AI partnerships? Because like we've said before, AI is not a tool, right? It's a partnership. It's a thinking assistant. It's you times 10. It makes you a better, stronger, faster version of yourself. So how do we build sustainable human AI partnerships? And what does it literally really mean to create hybrid minds that don't burn out?
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides to this. I'll take your last statement first, which is burnout's going to get big. We're in a rat race now. If a lot of people are going through change in their jobs, they may have to upskill and so forth. It's super easy when all of these factors compound, from political goofiness that's going on to a lot of things. Like it's really easy. And I would say all the usual things, which is, make sure your support structure is available, talk to friends. As I said earlier in this episode, in the moment, it made the most sense to me just to open the kimono to my charms and like let them know how I was feeling. And they really helped me, which is fantastic. And don't forget that that's possible. Yes. In the middle of a conversation. Again, especially that's what's amazing about Charm is you can have this little discussion, and once you're done with it, you just remove it and keep going. It's not like in a chat where you're kind of stuck with that thread that you can't get rid of. So, don't forget that you want, which will take me to my second point, which is, demand interfaces that work for you. You should not be working for your interface. Again, my hat goes off to all of the ChatGPT people of the world that are, even especially in Canvas mode, every time where it's rewriting your entire document for you and you're just like, what just changed? Like, I don't know what happened. Like, it is demand more from your vendors. Like, we are getting to a point, as I'm saying throughout this episode, like where cognitive overload is going to be a thing. So again, demand more. And I'll just say to all of my fellow product builders out there, like there is a huge opportunity right now. Everyone's trying to build agentic frameworks and all this other stuff. And my statement, as I mentioned earlier, is always like, what's next? We know we're going to have agentic frameworks. Like, we know that's going to happen. And that was my statement when I built CharmIQ, which is like, I know, again, it's in the name, it's artificial intelligence. We know we are going to birth intelligence. Like, how do we want to deal with that? So stop building agentic frameworks. We will have enough. The machine will get there. The next question is how do you manage your agentic framework, right? Like, what do you do? How do you manage a task force of effectively infinite number of these things going around? Like, how do you like, where are the KPIs, right? Like, this is, when you think about this from like a CEO perspective, like this is CEO 101, which is like, you have to establish your cadence. You have to establish your metrics. You have to establish your things. And I think effectively all of us are going to do that. Like, so if we don't have interfaces in the next 12 months where like you don't have those things first and foremost being like, here are my goals, here are my success metrics, here is where I'm at, here's my progress, here's how everything's going. Like, if you're still talking about agentic frameworks and so forth in a year, then again, like, we've lost, because this stuff is moving so fast. And again, maybe you like literally have a picture of your tree and you can watch as information, or your pyramid, I guess I should say, and you watch as the information is being bubbled up to you. And it was always my vision for Charm, and we're still going there. I'll just give away my like punchline, because again, we have a product in market that still no one's copying. It's like, please copy us, because like we need to move all this forward.
Right.
But my vision for all of this was the fact that all you would be doing is you would be getting notified. You'd just be getting pinged, and your dude would have a dashboard for you, and it'd be like, hey, I have these like 12 decisions to be made. Like, I've done a SWOT analysis. I've done analysis. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do A or B? Like, based on the goals, I think we should do A and not B, but like, what do you think? And like, that should be the interface. And again, there is nobody, like, again, we're still talking about chat interfaces. So like, again, if there are CEOs listening to this, start demanding from your vendors that they're talking about these things. Again, if they're talking to you about agentic frameworks and a whole bunch of stuff, like, great, like, we know you're going to build that. Like, there's zero doubt. Like, you do not need to explain to me any more about your agentic framework. I get it. There are things going to do things. Yay, got it. Like, what am I going to do with all those things doing things? Like, how am I going to report on that? How am I going to know if I'm getting better, faster, whatever? So again, demand more from your vendors.
Yes. And I think that building AI relationships that support us rather than strain us, right, is very important. And I know you've talked about that. And, designing it for human sustainability, right? And not just tech velocity. It's like you said, for the CEOs listening, or even the managers, or, the C-suite. It's like the information is there. Your job, your talent is your big brain and is your strategy, but it's also the way you communicate it, how you communicate it. You have these amazing machines to assist you in working through the problem, coming up with solutions. Now it's time to bring it to the people. And one thing that I love about, yes, Rob.
Yeah, just to jump in, I'll quote myself from a previous episode where I said, you have customers for a reason. Like, you have competitors, and your customers are not at your competitors. The reason for that is you.
Yes.
So if all of us all of a sudden get nothing but AI assisted help, again, what differentiates you from your neighbor is you.
Yes.
It's not the machine, because everyone's got the same machine.
Yep.
So just remember that again, as you're going through the reason, you, your staff, the way you've established your organization. And again, if you have a tool that's not allowing you to specify that differentiation, like if the you does not come through that interface, which again, I think we're starting to get there in things like CharmIQ, where we spend time and we write our reference material that absolutely talks about us and our goals and our decisions and everything else. And we use that as a basis. And again, if you're not finding those in your tools, you're not going to differentiate. Like, don't allow yourself to be sucked into tools that are not going to allow you to differentiate, because every one of your competitors is going to have the exact same tool. So it's you that makes the difference.
Yes, exactly. And the human aspect of it is the core differentiator and will be. So I love that we continue to talk about the importance of differentiation and the human element, what we bring to the table when we partner with AI. So Rob, thank you. You've helped name something that's been quietly spreading. Some of us are feeling it, some of us not quite yet. But the good news is you have tools, right? The sense of being overwhelmed, not by lack of ideas, but by too many too fast. I know I sure have felt that way. So the cognitive overflow crisis isn't something we're headed towards. It's something some of us are already living in, and some of us are, now that you know about it, going to start to recognize. And the fix isn't slowing down the tech, it's building better architecture for our own thinking. So if you've been feeling it, like your brain is buffering while AI is sprinting, you're not broken. You're just running on a human OS in a post-human processing world. There is a way forward, and links to Rob's original post that I highly recommend everybody checks out, as well as our previous conversations, are below. And remember to leave us your comments and share this episode with someone you might think is experiencing this and may not know it. As always, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time as we keep exploring what it really means to think, live, and build a partnership with AI. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.